Yeah. Subscribe to the channel. Oh Lord, what's wrong with me? Claudia Mikhailovna exclaimed, barely unstepping after landing on the garden. Oh! Once again, a year-old woman who had a sore lower abdomen crouched between the rags. After a little rest from another attack, the woman thought in horror. After all, this had never happened before. That's it. I'm dying. I want to live. I really want to. I want to have grandchildren. Claudia whispered. Tears rolled down her face. She barely finished her work in the garden and went home. She was in a bad mood. What do we have for lunch? He was a good man, but he was too much into order. And if something was out of schedule, Myron's mood changed instantly. In the fridge, soup? The woman said a little loudly. She went down to the couch and stretched out her belly. Myron, frightened, ran to his wife. He took her hand. Claudia, what's wrong with you? What did you lose? I'm dying, Miron. How to drink, I die. What? Myron was surprised, round eyes. Why did you take it? The attacks of strong pain in the stomach and back were tortured, but probably this is a deadly, incurable disease. Coughing and swallowing tears, Claudia was sticky. Yes, well, Clave cannot be. Myron was not surprised at all. Remember, our neighbor Tatiana had cancer, so she lost weight, and now she can't. Her skin is all bones, and you are all over the river. You are so sick and deadly. And it's true, Claudia thought. My husband is right. In the last few months, I am really all over the river. I don't know why, but I'm not a girl with a waist length. I was hit by it for years. Probably, it's because of my age. Claudia calmed down a little, and the attack seemed to have stopped. Our Lyudkas. Claudia kept her promise, and the next day, she went to the local medical center to see the Dr. Ludmila. The charming and cute girl, with kindness and attention, treated all residents. So she also greeted Claudia as a family member. Claudia Mikhailovna, hello, it's been a long time since I last saw you. Come in, be at home, and tell me what happened. Luda said with a sunny smile. She liked the locals. Simple, tactless, sincere, real. When Claudia shared her anxiety with her, Ludmila tried to keep calm and picked up good words to cheer up the upset woman. Claudia Mikhailovna, let's not make hasty conclusions. I will assign you the tests. Give up, get the results, and talk in detail. If necessary, I will assign you treatment. Agreed? Yes, Luda, you are a bright person. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I thank the woman. Not yet, Claudia Mikhailovna. Be healthy. That Saturday morning, Claudia will never forget. As always, she was cleaning up the house and wanted to go to the garden when the phone call was given. Claudia Mikhailovna, this is Ludmila Felsher. The results of the tests have arrived. Can you come to me today? Yes, Ladaka, of course I can. Claudia agreed immediately. Suddenly, an alarming pause hung in the air, as if Ludmila wanted to say something, but she didn't dare. Claudia's cats were screaming in her heart. Intuition hinted at something wrong with her, and said Felsher with a poorly covered excitement. What's wrong with me, Ladaka? Asked the woman, barely stepping over the threshold of the medical cabinet. I'm dying. No, Claudia Mikhailovna, what are you? No, you. Luda crouched, and then, on one breath, she threw up. Pregnant. Hearing these words, Claudia, as she sat down on the table, so frozen in place like a wax figure. And only a few seconds before Claudia came to the meaning of the word Ludmila. What? The woman got pale. Her eyes were rounded with horror. It's not true. She screamed in a loud voice, scaring the fielder, so she jumped aside. A few seconds later, the woman became blue. My analyses were confused with someone else's. Well, that's exactly how it is. I can't get pregnant at the age of. It can't be. This is nonsense. You find out, Luda, again. Ludmila just shook her head. Claudia Mikhailovna, there is no mistake. These are your tests. Yes, you are old. It is very rare to get pregnant in such years. An exceptional case, 1 in a million, and it is yours. You need to calm down and not panic. The woman's hands and legs were cold, and then, angry at the whole world, she shouted. Calm down? What do you mean? I don't need pregnancy. I don't need it at all. If I'm pregnant, do an abortion immediately. I won't give birth anymore. I gave birth. Ludmila had a hard time holding her weight, but she found the strength to answer. It's too late to do an abortion. You have almost months of pregnancy. And that's not all. Not one, but two. Her hands were hanging like a blanket. She looked at one point with a hopeless look. Ludmilla, frightened, jumped up to the woman, offered her some water. "It's okay. We'll observe the pregnancy. Everything will be fine." As best she could, Luda calmed down, although she herself was excited to the limit. "This is the first time in her medical practice. Can I help you with anything else?" asked Ludmilla when Claudia Mikhailovna Malimowski came to her. "No," she said in a dismay and walked to the door, carrying the burden of misfortune that fell on her. Luda silently looked after her and thought about her own. For her, pregnancy would definitely not have become a grief, but on the contrary, it turned into true happiness. They tried to have a child with Jaeger for several years. A bunch of useless attempts to get pregnant did not lead to anything. In the end, they broke up so they could not fix their family life. Then it got even worse. People were waiting for a real test of strength from colleagues at work in a children's hospital. They constantly patted her, like a shoeless shoe. Ludmilla couldn't take it, left everything, and went to the village slum. At least nobody knows about her here. Today, after finding out about the pregnancy of Claudia Mikhailovna, Ludmilla was not herself. As if someone had pulled this story about the child out of her again and opened an old wound on her heart. Claudia Mikhailovna perceived her pregnancy in a completely different way. No other than the punishment of God, the punishment for the sins committed. But what for? Myron's husband and I have always lived in the village of truth and conscience, in the village of our native land. We gave birth to a daughter, Irina, a beauty and a smart girl. But her character is not from the ordinary. She went to the city to look for a career and personal life, but she did not get anything else. She worked as a waitress in a cafe for a small salary, but she didn't get along with the staff either. She married a young man, and he took her and left her in 6 months. Despite all the misfortune, Irina did not want to return to the village, but she gladly received material support from her parents. Claudia never rushed to fate. What is? But now she couldn't stand it. She slowly waved along the village streets, falling over from side to side like a duck. Even her walk changed. All her life was carried out in front of her eyes with a bright ribbon. And only the greetings of the villagers returned her to reality. Good health, Claudia, spread from all sides. The woman imagined for a moment that she was very scared. Soon this village man will laugh at her and say completely different things. Like at old age, she's gone completely crazy. How shameful to hurt a child at such an age, shame. And only. From these thoughts, Claudia had a cold on her skin. She can't stand mockery and ridicule. Claudia clearly realized this with her mind. And Myron has a tough temper. He won't accept such a stroke of fate. There was only a little bit left until home, just a bridge over a small river. And that's it. Claudia immediately came to her mind. Crazy thought. What if we jump into the river from the bridge and get rid of all the problems that hung on it like a chain? Well, life, most of it is lived and will be. God will forgive me. He forgives everyone. Claudia herself does not remember that moment when she barely managed to climb over the fence, looked down at the muddy water. It was scary, but I jumped. There were a few seconds left before she would set the last point. Suddenly the air was blown by a frightening scream. It was Myron's husband, who by chance was near at the right time and at the right place. He saw and saved Claudia from a childish wails and crying at night were not part of the plan. But still, it's better than losing Claudia. Myron thought bitterly. Only now, with a bitter feeling, Myron realized how dear his wife was to him. The news of pregnancy was so amazing that Myron and Claudia did not dare to tell this to their daughter Irina. You have to get used to the idea that they will have children, and this will happen soon. Since the Lord sends us children, it means it is good for God. At the same time, Myron and Claudia decided. Together they came under the. Claudia's pregnancy was very hard. Her legs were bleeding. She suffered from toxicosis and headaches. But as the tests and the ultrasound showed, she was fine. For Claudia, this was the most important thing, and she was able to endure all the pain and discomfort. Nothing foreshadowed the trouble, but she was very wary of Claudia and Myron and came from nowhere. From the closest person, Irina's daughter. They didn't dare to tell her everything. who knew that this indecision would play a cruel joke on Claudia and Myron. Today is a special Sunday. Claudia's pregnancy passed the mark of 7 months. It was on this day that Irina called. "Mom, I'll come today, can I?" The girl was whispering with a gentle voice. She rarely visited her parents in the village, not more than twice a year. Basically, her communication with her relatives was limited by rare phone conversations. "Yes, of course, daughter," replied Claudia. Her voice was shaking from excitement, and her hands shook. The stomach immediately gave itself to no, when in waves of the push-ups of the children's feet. Apparently, the mother's experiences were passed on to the children. Claudia and Myron were waiting for the evening with a cold heart when Irina would come. They regretted that they did not tell Claudia's daughter about pregnancy in time. They knew that Ira was not an easy girl and were preparing for any of her reactions. But what they heard from the child was beyond their expectations. "Hello, Dad. I'm not for long. Do you need help?" Without hesitation, she smacked her father in the cheek and smacked Ira. After a few seconds, the girl's face turned pale and her lower lip shook from indignation. "What the hell is this?" Irina exclaimed, looking at her mother. "Are you pregnant? You're old for that. You're going crazy. Don't talk to your mother like that." He stood up for Claudia Myron. "And you there," the girl whined at her father. "It's time to think about retirement and not to have children," they thought. Claudia and Myron were in a hurry from the horror when Irina was soullessly screaming, forcing not only the air to shudder, but also the hearts of her parents. The snake was warmed up on her neck, thought Myron. And who does she have such a heartless and heartless? Irina spread even more and counted on her parents like unborn children. And about the future, they thought, who knows how long you will live. Just don't hang on me. I need to arrange my life. I will not keep your children if I have to. Do not count on me. Claudia had blood in her veins from such words. The feeling of resentment and bitterness took over her. Did I really raise my daughter so poorly that only such a relationship is worthy of me? The woman thought, but did not find an answer. Tears rolled down her eyes. She swallowed the daughter's rude speech like a bitter pill. She tried to calm herself down, but nothing worked. Suddenly, Claudia felt the nausea coming to her throat, and in a second the unbearable pain in the abdomen burned her body. The woman screamed in anguish, leaned against the wall with her hand, and slowly crawled to the floor. Myron ran up to her, grabbed her hand. "Claudia, what's wrong with you?" "Myron, I feel bad. Call an ambulance." "But the deadline has not yet come." The man muttered in confusion. "Call." Claudia prayed, and again came into a new scream. She got pale, and her face was distorted from the strongest pain that no one can bear. Claudia immediately closed her eyes and smothered Myron's hand. He was so scared that he couldn't hold back his tears. He shook his hands and dialed the ambulance's phone number. "Be patient, the ambulance will come soon. Let's go to the maternity hospital." By the ambulance, Claudia was in a half-asleep state, interrupted only by severe pain. They arrived at the city hospital almost an hour later. On the couch in front of the big, wide doors in the operating room, Claudia, losing consciousness, could only whisper to her husband, "Goodbye, Myron, take care of the children, don't leave them." "And you?" the man asked with tears in his eyes. "I probably won't be there anymore." With difficulty, Claudia said, feeling that the last of her strength. "Leave her." The time spent in the maternity ward showed Myron eternity. Although only a few minutes have passed, and fear and anxiety have completely taken over them. Even he, a man far from medicine, understood that children will appear to the world in 7 months, unbeknownst. And this means that there may be big health problems. Claudia herself felt terrible before her birth. She was afraid that everything would end in a wail. Her last words and experiences of today made her aware. The pain overpowered the heart of Myron. He barely held onto his feet, and when he sat down, he threw his head up and fell asleep. He woke up from touching someone's arm on his shoulder, said the nurse with a kind face. "But my wife is giving birth now. The births are heavy," Myron said in a shudder. "Everyone is giving birth here. It's a maternity home. When the births are over, the children will be born. We will definitely call you," promised the nurse. In fact, she certainly knew about the old woman. And not only she, the whole maternity home was buzzing with this news. It's not often that a 5-minute-old woman is given birth here. Of course, it's not safe to give birth at this age, and it's not known what kind of children will be born. The nurse didn't upset the man who was so worried. She pretended that these are normal births and that they just had to follow the rules set in the maternity hospital. Yes, of course, Myron was reluctant to agree, and with his head down, he leaped to the door. Despite his fatigue, the man did not want to leave. Being here, he was closer to his wife, and he was the first to learn the news. What about the house? Lonely, naked walls and memories from which even wolves howl. Myron wanted to cry out, if not for the daughter of Irina. When Myron saw her, he was outraged to the core. The girl, as if nothing had happened, laughed and whistled on the phone, agreeing to meet her friend. What a heartless and cruel attitude towards her mother. She sent the unfortunate mother to the hospital early, and there was nothing to do with her. Yes, we have seen her with Claudia. They missed the moment when she turned from a good girl into a monster. Myron was even more upset. He walked past his daughter. He just couldn't talk to her right now. He went down to the bed, unable to hold on to his feet anymore. He couldn't fall asleep either. Claudia stood before his eyes so clearly, as if she was in this moment with him in the room. Myron never even thought that. She loves her wife so much. She loves her endlessly. However, she rarely talked about this to Clavius. Or rather, she never talked about it. Only on the wedding day. Clavius was always by her side, and Myron lived behind her like a stone wall. He didn't notice her beauty, kindness, and great soul. And now Clavius suddenly didn't become by his side. Immediately, the heart was crushed by the unbearably stinging feeling of loneliness, despair, and need for no one in this world. If only he knew that despair was in the air, not only in his thoughts, but also in the operating room, where doctors fought for Claudia's health and her children. The woman was still unconscious. But still, the operation was successful. Now the tiny body of 2 7-month-old babies will be examined by the doctors and the nurse, and then placed in a special compartment in which their lives will be supported. Young Dr. Igor Zaitsev couldn't stand it and shouted, "Yeah, why did she get pregnant and not get an abortion at the age of? She's crazy. She's going crazy. Where did her gynecologist go? It's not right to be such a useless thing to force a grandmother to give birth." And even earlier the term was passed. And don't say it, it's better to sit on the hair, and if the children survive, they will definitely have pathologies. This is not even a fortune teller, and so clear. His friend and colleague at the same time told him, "Shut up, you suckers. It's not shameful to give birth in the presence of a midwife." The doctor Leonid Anatolyevich, the head doctor of the maternity hospital, overestimated himself and left almost half of the staff for the surgery. After all, not every day is the birth of a lady of a respectable age. We, Leonid Anatolyevich, have said nothing but the truth. The young generation of doctors has been stunned. Besides, the midwife still doesn't hear anything. They didn't even think that Claudia, after getting in reality for a few seconds from the darkness, got the meaning of their words. Her body immediately shuddered as if in convulsions. Slugs was heard. Leonid Anatolyevich, the birthmark of the pressure, has sharply decreased. Oh my God, for sure, Lyra. And the heartbeat is weak. Yes, we can lose her at any moment. We need to do a reanimation. All staff rushed to help, but something irreparable happened. Minutes later, Claudia Mikhailovna disappeared. Her body couldn't take such a terrible load. But, as it turns out, the trouble does not come alone. A few hours later, the prophecy predictions of one of the doctors came true. Claudia's children were really having pathologies. One of the babies did not fully develop a visual nerve. She practically saw nothing. And the other one has the strongest heart failure. She will not live for 2 months. The doctors predicted. The news of the death of Claudia Mikhailovna and the terrible diagnosis of children became a murder for Myron. No, he did not lay hands on himself, but his brain forever refused to accept what happened. The village women were whispering all over Myron and Claudia. "Hey, Vasilievna, Myron is crazy after Claudia's death. Here's the cross, personally heard." One of the neighbors was, "Daughter of Myron." Suddenly the death of her mother shook her. She always thought that her parents would be at hand and was not ready to take care of them. But she could not even imagine that at the end of the mother's life, there is her fault. Irina's heart was so pure that she did not feel her guilt and could not even imagine to repent. Dad, we need to bury Mom. Let's decide on the funerals. Worrying, the girl said, What's the matter, daughter? What are you talking about? Who to bury? Mom went to her relatives, to your grandmother. She will be back soon. As if nothing had happened, said Myron. Dad, what are you doing? Grandma died a long time ago, and yesterday Mom also died. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Ira, again you read about the dead in adult books, said Myron and shook his head. Here, Mom will come and give you for this. Oh, give? You better look at the weather on the street. The sun is shining brightly. Go for a walk. Otherwise, you will go to school. There will be no time. Go, Irina, go. Just don't be late, walk. Come back earlier, so that Mom and I don't worry. Irina looked at her father with horror. She couldn't say anything else. The hands and legs shook in fear. Unable to cope, Irina ran out into the street with a smile and banged on the door of the neighbor's house. Aunt Galia, please open the door. The girl shouted out loud. I'm coming, I'm coming. The voice from the depths of the house was heard, and in a few seconds the door opened and Galina Matveevna appeared on the threshold. Together with her mother, they once worked at the post office and became friends. Ira, what happened to you? The woman asked, worried. Mom needs to be buried, and Dad. Irina was upset. He forgot everything, as if he flew somewhere to another planet. Help me, please. You're right, Ira. There are such pains that not all people can cope with. Your dad couldn't cope either. Don't worry, we'll take the funeral for ourselves. Everyone in the village loved and respected Claudia. That's what to do with the children of Claudia. Galina Matveevna asked a question that Irina didn't even think about. Aunt Galia, I can't take them away. But how do I raise them without money? My salary as a waitress won't even be enough for a. But who will give sick children? Irina is young, windblown, unmarried. What will she do with them? Without the absolute desire to engage in children and financial opportunities. Her father, Myron, because of the death of Claw, has moved with reason. Claw has no relatives capable of raising her children. We are all Claw's friends, not young, not particularly healthy. We can also be in the cemetery at any time. Forgive me, Lord, for what I'm doing to refuse. To give up on children. It's a big sin, I know. But at the moment, it will be better for them to be in the state's care, and then maybe some childless couple will take them into the foster family. I've heard that it happens that even sick children are taken. Galina whispered the words of repentance in silence. Galina Matveevna kept her word and organized the funeral of Claudia Mikhailovna. All the villages buried Claudia. Many loved and respected her. They knew what had happened. Because of this, the grief of loss became even more severe. But Claudia Mikhailovna's family was not with her in this sad moment. Irina's daughter came, but she was holding the mansion and was afraid to approach the coffin to look at the dead mother's face. She didn't come up. She didn't dare to ask for forgiveness for her misdeed. Amarn was not at the cemetery at all. He continued to stay in a happy memory. He fell into the times when they were young with Claudia, and Irina had just started going to school. The quietness of the cemetery was interrupted by the sad babes of the war. They went into all the lads in the crowd, went in, and in a few minutes they silenced them. Having lowered their heads, the funeral procession of the village cemetery moved back into the village. Only one man remained in the cemetery and cried out in a voice on a freshly dug grave. This is the future of Ludmila, who discovered the pregnancy of Claudia Mikhailovna. She blamed only herself and her death. She did not look closely, did not monitor. She sent to the city to do an ultrasound on an old device, perhaps which gave wrong testimony. She did not see the pathology of the children. Oh, Claudia Mikhailovna, Aunt Clava, what have I done to you? Forgive me if you can. I will kneel at your knees all my life to pray for your forgiveness. Although your body is already breathless, but the soul is alive and it hears me. Ludmila begged, and tears flowed down her cheeks. And then the girl was stunned. She shivered with all her body. And then she raised her eyes in a gloomy sky, filled with tears, and said again as an oath, "Claudia Mikhailovna, I really want to atone for my guilt before you and God. I dream of doing what you couldn't do, to raise and raise children born to you. I don't know why, but I believe that they will not die. They will live for themselves and for you. I promise, and do everything possible to keep my promise." Ludmila herself did not expect such words from herself, but they were not coming from the head, but from the heart, and therefore the words she said were the most sincere and real. For a long time, Luda could not make herself break away from the grave, get up and go after everyone in the village. Only when it started to rain, she got wet and went home. Such strong promises are not given up. If you have sworn, then you must fulfill. Do otherwise, do not respect yourself. And Ludmila decided to start to implement the idea immediately. You can't hide anything from people in the village. And Luda, of course, knew what happened to Claudia's husband, Myron. She, like on her wings, the next morning, ran to the maternity home, where she ran into Irina, who had just written a statement about her refusal to have children. Ludmila couldn't hold back her emotions, and immediately after Irina, she broke into the office of the head of the maternity home, Elena Sergeevna. But she was clearly not in the mood. An elderly woman died immediately after a surgery with a bunch of doctors in the hall who were unable to provide medical help. What else is the event? They won't be able to smoothen this out. Children with pathology, rejection from them, that's still a mess. What do you need? Finally, the head of the hospital asked the dissatisfied tone, torn from the paper. When Ludmila told about the purpose of her visit, Elena Sergeevna just twisted her finger. "Girl, you're a fielder, and you're talking nonsense. You don't give a maternity home to your children. Go to the maternity home. If you're talking about the children of an elderly patient, don't you know that they were born under the supervision of a doctor? I can't help you. Please free the room." Suddenly, Ludmila lost her voice for a few seconds, and then, not having eaten, she left the office. "But it's okay," she said. She was tired of waiting for the kids to be transferred to the orphanage. Despite the doctor's reassuring prediction, the girls survived. Ludmila constantly prayed for their health. She went to the shops with pleasure and bought children's clothes. So, she brought the moment of meeting with the girls closer. It's been 6 months since Ludmila had the opportunity to come to the orphanage and ask for the adoption of girls. The director of the orphanage, Tatyana Sergeevna, turned out to be a kind person, but said what shocked Ludmila. "I'm sorry, Ludmila, but the girls already have a foster family. This is a well-off and not a young couple. From day to day, they will file documents for adoption." "But how is that?" Ludmila called out. "After all, the girls must be with me." The director was surprised to see the new, strange young woman. "Why exactly you? You are not married, you live alone in a one-room apartment, you have a small salary. How are you going to keep the children? Treat them? You probably know that both girls need constant treatment." But Ludmila tried to pick up the words and failed. "That's it. It's a miracle that such girls have found a foster family. Apparently, they were born under a lucky star," Tatyana Sergeevna said confidently. Ludmila was sitting on her own. She understood that this was the end. They will not give her the girls. She will not fulfill the promise given to her on the grave by Claudia. What a cruel life. I hate her. The girl was shocked by the indignation and pain, and tears fell into her eyes. Suddenly, a man and a woman of years entered the office and knocked on the door. "Tatyana Sergeevna, we have brought the documents for the daughter-in-law," said the woman, pulling the folder. "Good day, thank you. Sit down, Olga Ivanovna, Viktor Sergeyevich." "Ludmila is leaving now," said the head of the department, leaving an unkind look towards the girl. Luda figured out that she had a future for the parents of girls. She was begging her to listen to her, not expecting such a nagging from herself. She told her not funny story so intimately and sincerely that it melted the hearts of Olga Ivanovna and Viktor Sergeyevich. "Ludmila, we see that you are a good, kind person, but we will not give up on girls anyway. However, we can offer you a place as a nanny. Then you will be always next to the children. Do you agree?" "Yes," said Luda quietly, realizing that this is her only chance. What will you call them? Together with her husband, they decided that we would call Claudia and Victoria. Olga Ivanovna smiled. With the word Claudia, Ludmila's face lit up. She understood that everything should go well. It was going to be a difficult journey, but the money of the foster parents and the prayers of Ludmila did their job. Victoria was still in her childhood abroad, had expensive heart surgery. Claudia needed a vision surgery so that she could see the world with her own eyes, even in glasses. Years flew by like one day. All this time, Ludmila was close. Together with her foster parents and girls, she lived in a large private house. From the first days, they treated her as a member of a united and friendly family. Much thanks to people Claudia and Victoria, from disobedient, annoying girls, turned into educated, smart, kind girls, and soon will become students of prestigious universities. Ludmila did not create her own family, and she did not strive for this. The girls became her family. Luda did not think of the best share for herself. The day when the girls called her mom became the happiest day in life. And only then did Ludmila proudly say, "You see, Aunt Claw, I did it. I was able to keep my word. You must be happy in heaven, and I am here on earth. Someday we will meet. You will see. I promise."